I usually don't cover Xbox news, but this encompasses both consoles in the grand scheme of things, and I also do play Xbox games from time to time. Now, there's claims that it's a hefty number of developers that want Xbox to drop the mandatory S series compatibility. As of right now, we know for sure it's the developers of I Am Fish and Surgeon Simulator, along with the developers of Gotham Knights, directly blaming the S series for the capped frame rate. Now, originally, I did not know anything about the S series until about maybe 5 or 6 months ago when I was shopping for a PlayStation 5 and someone, recommended me this console because it was in stock. Now, the thing that really surprised me was the price point. I initially thought it was an X series that just didn't have a disc drive. I did not know that it was a weaker console with worse specs. And, now looking at it, at first I didn't think they made it, mandatory for developers to have to develop an S series version of mine, but now it kind of makes sense, like why Halo Infinite looked like, an Xbox One game. Why we haven't really seen any good looking Xbox exclusives, and probably, I'm not gonna say we probably won't, but we won't see anything on par with PS5 in my opinion. Now I could be wrong, but you look at the specs, which I'm gonna show you a little bit later in the video. I don't think we're gonna see anything too crazy as long as they have this console basically, pushing development back. Now, when looking at the specs, I decided to compare the S series to the PlayStation 5 instead of the X series, and the reason for that is Microsoft has a lot of spin around the comparisons of these two consoles. They try to downplay the gap in power between the two, and I feel like with the PlayStation 5 or the PlayStation 5 comparisons, it's a lot more clear and precise, whereas with the Xbox S series, the X series, they're kind of still trying to market both. They want you to buy either one of these consoles, so they're not going to downplay one of them to sell you the other, especially if one's more affordable. One of the first things that caught my eye when I was looking at the specs for this console was how they just bullshit the frame rate and resolution. The fact they just have 120 frames and like the resolution like is finite is just laughable to me, because we've already seen developers come out and say this will only be 60 frames per second, this will only be 30 frames per second. So that already disproves that little bullshit 120 frames per second. Like every game's gonna just play that. Especially too as a weak console, it's so weird to have that frame rate cap so high. And as you can see from that little comparison there, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox X series are just leaps and bounds better than the S series in every way. They have more RAM, they have better processor, they have a far stronger GPU. It's not even a comparison, and this is what's going to hinder, next gen experiences for quite a while. Now, I do believe that some developers might possibly drop Microsoft, because let's be realistic here. I've said this in the past. Xbox has trouble selling games, especially this is before Game Pass, but now with Game Pass, absolutely. They have a hard time, getting people to buy games. So it would make sense to just prioritize the console that you actually sell games on. I feel like this is something that was a good idea on paper, but the way they did it, the way they basically marketed it, no. I feel like they just kind of just missed the mark entirely. I feel like they've also backed themselves into a corner. I do not believe they're going to drop the mandatory, X series version for games, because they could probably, be sued. There's a lot of red tape here now because they've really built this as a next gen console, and all of a sudden, what, how many years, we're like 2 years into this generation, and all of a sudden it's not able to get games, running on the console anymore. It doesn't have next gen titles supported. It's basically getting dropped from, development. And I don't think they're going to go for that. I think that they're going to basically, try to fight this out tooth and nail, and it's going to negatively impact X series owners and PlayStation 5 owners, because now we have to have a game that's hindered by the S series and, its shortcomings. I think it's kind of funny how everybody blamed last generation consoles for holding this generation back when the real culprit has been the S series all along. If you look at the jump from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4, there was a lot of games that were on PlayStation 3 that still got next gen counterparts on PlayStation 4. Dragon Age Inquisition, Battlefield 4, Shadows of Mordor. I'm sure I'm missing a title or two, but it's actually pretty easy to do when you just split up two teams. What they're doing here with this, they're essentially giving developers three different consoles, and they have to develop with the weakest one in mind first. Well, anyway, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, dislike if you don't like it. See you on the next video.